welcome to Strings and Pages. I'm Kevin Sullivan, your host, and we will be reading Chapter 17 of The Great Escape. I'm just going to get right into it. Possible warning, mild language, possibly. We'll see. Neither brother spoke for much of the hour ride to work. They had risen early, as always, and gotten out quietly enough not to wake the women. As they reached the outskirts of what was supposed to be their new cluster, Joe couldn't take it anymore. He had to speak. "Who's getting them?" he asked. "I don't know," David said. "Did you ask?" "I think so." "You think so?" "It was late," David said. "I was receiving the worst news and being taken off guard. I had 1,000 questions going through my head, and I'm not sure which ones came out. Bottom line, it's real. These aren't our homes." "And we must spread the word. Just not to Thomas." "Why not Thomas?" "Because he knew yesterday, and he lied to our faces. He thinks he's got some kind of upper hand. If he knows that we know, it might change his behavior. He could even throw us off the job." "I'm not sure I want to work here anyway," Joe said. "Let him throw—" "No," David interrupted. "We don't want to go back to the lock. We need to stay here." "Need?" Joe asked. "Why do we need to stay here?" David looked at his brother. "I can't tell you that in this cab." The morning came and went. Thomas stayed mostly out of sight, just as well. The icing on the cake was the new sign at the entrance to the job site, a large wooden creation with engraved golden letters that read, "Welcome to Breezy Curve. Your new home is proudly brought to you by the GAD." Seeing this sign for the first time, today of all days, really stung. For lunch today, David opted to exit the main yard and eat from the roach coach just inside the main gate. When he got his food, he walked back to where the rest of the workers sat lined up along what eventually would be the new Solar Road, just like they always were at lunch. David walked up and down the row one time, looked into the eyes of every man and woman on the job. He wanted to talk about this with all of them, but he didn't want to raise his voice loud enough for all of them to hear. Instead, he called Reynolds over to this cube. "What's going on?" Reynolds asked. "It's true," David said, cutting right through the fat. Reynolds was stung. It was like this was the first time he was hearing the rumor since Thomas had done a decent job of putting out the fire yesterday. "I was visited by an enforcer last night. He told me himself. These are going to a bunch of inner ringers." "It's true," Joe added. Reynolds ran a hand through his hair. This news, presented so factually, was devastating. Before he could completely lose it, David added, "I've got an idea. It's drastic, though. I'd like to talk about it with anyone who's been working here and wants in. I want to escape the rings altogether and live on land." Reynolds looked at David like he'd lost his mind. It was actually the first time Joe had heard this come from his brother's mouth, and he didn't flinch. "You can't be serious," Reynolds said. David came to face and replied, Reynolds, look around you. This isn't ours like we thought. They're giving it to a bunch of rich, I don't know, outcasts. And they aren't even paying us, man. I don't want to live in shit for the rest of my life. And if I don't do anything about it, it's never gonna change. This was all too good to be true. I think I knew it all along. Reynolds finally replied, "We've got to talk about that. Just not here. I'll spread the word about the program. The rest, I'll keep that under my hat, mainly because it's crazy talk coming from me. You'll have a safe audience tonight at the Axe if you want." David nodded and the two parted ways. "You're really serious about this?" Joe asked. "I know you're a capable guy, but what you are proposing is pretty much the craziest thing I've ever heard from you." David sat down. "As far as I'm concerned, Joe, this is life or death." The bar was as busy as usual when the Hagen brothers arrived. The only difference was Reynolds and company weren't in their usual seats, rather occupying a room at the back of the club by the billiards tables. David and Joe were surprised to see how many had crammed into the area. There were at least 20 people waiting for them. Jen ran up and hugged Joe. He was delighted to see her, though tonight lacked the giddy energy that had accompanied their previous rendezvous. "It's safe," Reynolds said. "No cameras back here, no AIs either. And everyone is cool." "Good," David replied. He glanced at nearly every head in the room, noting they were all familiar, as they were regulars on the job. Breezy Curve, as it would soon be known as. This was a good thing. He knew these people were as sore as he, and this would ensure that his thoughts, plans, and ultimately actions would not be shared outside this group. "I'll tell you what I told Reynolds," David began. "Last night, I was visited by an enforcer who told me that our cluster is going to rich outsiders from their 7th ring." The room came alive with hisses, grunts, and the sucking of teeth. The disgust was palpable. "You're friends with an enforcer?" one worker asked. "Yes," David said. "Sort of. He's helped me a few times. He's how I got into the program to begin with. He's a good person, and I know he's telling me the truth. So believe me or not, don't say I didn't warn you when you stick around and find out at the end. You'll be both broke and broken-hearted." "Stick around," another asked. "What else are we supposed to do? It's not like we can just pick our own jobs. Man, this is..." David and Reynolds locked eyes at this point. He knew where David was about to go, and he didn't try and stop him. "I'm leaving the rings, and I'm inviting anyone who wants to go with me," David said. Silence, followed by some laughter and shock. "Leaving the rings," one said mockingly. "And go where? Up to space?" This is when David pulled out a paper, unfolded it, and held it for all to see. "The mining site map," Joe said. "How long have you had that?" "I took this from the old site months ago to study it and become more effective at work. I had hopes of moving up, but recently this has turned into a source of motivation, a new kind of dream that I've kept tucked away. I believe I took the map now for this reason." He turned again to the crowd, seeing that no one was laughing. Rather, all were giving him their undivided attentions. "My brother and I worked on this site for months," David said. "I'm not proposing we go there specifically, that would be suicide. Rather, up here." He pointed to an area on the map well north of the site, under 3 words that spelled Olympic Mountain Range. "It's a perfect spot," David said. "The GAD will never farm there, nor will they ever find us in all that heavy forest." "How do we get there?" another asked. David noticed this was Dean Miller, standing with his arms crossed and a hard look in his eye. Answering this specific question felt like a gamble for some reason, yet David took that risk. "This is certainly the riskiest part of the plan, and the hardest. I've been watching the piles of materials on the site for a few weeks now. They've got some shipments during the day and others what appear to be every night, or at least after working hours. I think they do this to avoid site congestion, but the point is, those transport ships are easily large enough to fit 50 of us, let alone 20, and they are very predictable." "Can you fly one, though?" Dean asked. "Probably," David said. "I've been getting closer to them when they arrive and looking inside. The console looks like some equipment my brother and I have used in the past." "Perks of Class B," someone said from the crowd. "I'm also hoping they have some kind of auto-fly that might help," David added. "These things can go fast, but let's not forget, they can also go slow. If things go like I'm sure they will, we can coast nice and easy. No need to rush." "When do we do this? Day or night?" another asked. "And how do we get all the way to the site? It's an hour's ride from here. It would take forever to walk, and we'd probably be pegged for a fun mob if we all went together." "We take our families with us on the morning of the big day," David said. "They'll walk around the outside of the job while we work one last normal day. One man won't scan in. That way he won't be looked for when we sign out at the end of the day. That person will sneak in at lunchtime, then hide and let everyone else back in, families included, after closing. Now we're all in. We hide again, wait for the transport jet to arrive, or just steal it if it's already there, and take off." "That's risky as hell," Hagen, one worker said. "You make it sound so simple. Think about cameras, other people, even the one guy who's supposed to be out could be spotted. Lots of things to fall apart." "Of course this is risky," David said. "That's why we're probably the first to ever do it. And imagine if this whole time it was that easy." Reynolds stood for a closer look at the map and shook his head. "Let's say we actually pull all this off. What do we do once we get there? Where do we stay? What do we eat?" "You guys and ladies have never been there before," David said. "I have, and I'll tell you this. There's more food running around that forest than we'll know what to do with. We'll just have to learn to hunt it, which might take a few days, perhaps even a couple weeks to get settled and catch an animal. But one catch will feed everyone in this room a dozen times. That's how resourceful that forest is. I wouldn't lie to you. It's going to be rough at first, but then it'll be paradise. We could even bring enough food to get us going." Somebody said from the back of the crowd. "Yes," David said, capitalizing on the moment. "Now you're thinking. Guys, imagine this. Never going to work again. Enjoying the cleanest air and water you've ever smelled and tasted. Eating the most amazing, nutritious food this planet has to offer. And best of all, ditching this ruthless government and carving out our own homes from the beauty of nature. We can do it. And I bet it won't even be that hard. Risky? In the beginning. But difficult? Probably not. Just show up and do it." "I'm in," Joe said, standing beside his brother. He looked at Jen and grabbed her hand. "And I want you there with me." Her face looked troubled, and for obvious reasons. "I love being with you, Joe," she said. It's just what?" he asked. You want to stay here on this metal prison forever and let the salt eat you from the inside out? He placed a hand on David's shoulder as he said this. My brother's right. We can do this, and we goddamn should do it. You know why? Because the GAD has just showed us all in this room that we don't mean shit. Jen, please don't make me choose between you and freedom. I want them both. I wanted you to live with me in our new cube, but guess what? I'm not getting that cube. None of you are getting new cubes. And don't you forget it when you settle your head on your pillows, if you're lucky enough to have one in that little steel sweat box you call home. We should get out of here, and guess what? It's your lucky day, because if there's ever been a team that could pull it off, it's us. And we're offering you all the chance of a lifetime. Joe turned again to Jen and said, I will protect you with every fiber of my being, Jen Reed. Please say yes to this, and let me also provide you the most amazing life that I possibly can. Jen was silent for a moment, then she stood and said, I don't know if I'm crazy about you, Joe, or just crazy, but I say yes. Let's get the hell out of this place and see what the world has to offer. I say yes. As Jen stood and hugged Joe Hagan, the room erupted in applause, at least from most. The mood was electric now in this little space in the back of the Axe. Even if the plan was crazy, the brothers had a way of working this crowd. They had their reservations, but all in all, they believed in the Hagan brothers. And having been recently handed the most awful news in a long time, the belief that something better was still coming their way was a real comfort, an uplifter, something to really be excited about. David Hagan folded the map and put it in his pocket. What I'm going to say next shouldn't have to be said, but I'm going to say it anyway. The success of this mission depends heavily on your utter discretion. How many of you are in? Oh, at first, only half the room raised their hands. Joe looked at David, saw his wheels turning. Everyone else was lost in thought, as more and more hands slowly came up. Some were reluctant, but soon enough, every single hand had been raised. They all were in. Good, David said as they dropped their arms. That makes it easier. Even so, loose lips sink ships, folks. I implore you not to speak of this plan with anyone. Anyone. Don't even talk to each other about it, unless you're absolutely sure no one is around you. The bartender stuck her head in the room and asked, You guys okay? It's not like you to hide back here all night. Actually, no, Joe said. We've got way too many dry mugs back here. A round for all my friends. On me. Many thanks went out to Joe as the bartender smiled and disappeared, leaving David to wrap things up. I figure we have a month until the transport ships stop delivering to the site, he said. The last thing to go in will be the Solar Road. They'll have lots of deliveries for that. So, this gives us safely 3 weeks to make this happen. We'll meet here every third night until then, to iron out the details and stay in touch. If there's any emergencies, let me or Reynolds know. He briefly made eye contact with every person in the room once again. Thank you for all of you for hearing me out. Thank you for considering this, and thank you all for keeping it hush-hush. I already consider you all family. The bartender returned with backup, trays of mugs of mead and ale for all. To life, Joe Hagan said with a hoist. To life, the group cheered. Chapter 17 of The Rings of Hydra, Great Escape. Thank you for being here. Go ahead and click that like or subscribe. Means the world to me. See you on the next one. See you on the page.